Okay, and action. So, all right, welcome back to another podcast of One and a Half Pastors. I'm Pastor Will.
I'm Pastor Dan. Hi there.
Like, how awkward and wooden can we make this? I bet we could make it even more awkward. You know, like with product placement, or like we could just have like Folgers coffee sitting right here, or...
Well, I do have my coffee. I was thinking more like if I had some script I had to read it.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello, my name is Dan.
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
to see.
And when I'm thirsty, I drink Diet Mountain Dew. You know, we could make this really just totally awkward. Maybe we get some sponsorships though for our podcast. I don't know. We got this guy here. He's the mascot for the day. I don't know if we should call him Harvey and say he's a puka.
Yeah,
that's a really old film reference. No one's going to get that film reference, but
A few might, but maybe.
maybe.
They can look it up.
So this is like, if you can't see this on the video, this is a penguin, and apparently we had these in the youth shed. I don't know why you'd have penguins. We had 4 of these.
There was something we used to do with penguins that got put around in members' yards, and I think they got. Originally there were like 12 of them, but there's only 4 left. But
So Harvey here is a survivor, one of
Yes.
only 4, and he survived. And the youth recently, with a Bible study night with Mitch.
Yep.
He told me they found these because I was walking past his office over here, and I look in, and there's 4 penguins at the table, and they're all reading books.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on there, Mitch? And he was telling me all about youth night and how the youth were having fun, and they brought these penguins to his office. So Harvey is going to be our mascot for the day.
Yeah, Harvey's joining us, and
He's not going to get us any sponsorships,
but in all seriousness, props to Mitch too, because it sounds like the youth are having fun. They got the bow ties. There was discussion even of making some top hats for the penguins, and
they're gonna get crafty about it, I guess. Okay.
So,
well, good. Today's topic is a reverse bicycle.
a reverse bicycle. Yeah, I like this.
Like, what's the reverse bicycle? So we were both on this.
Yes.
We both got this text from a church member.
Yep.
And it was a link to a video that was made by an engineer. I actually think he's from Alabama. I got the impression that he's like he tries to cover up his accent because like he went to school and stuff.
But he's definitely Southern.
But it's a North Alabama accent.
Okay.
I know that sounds funny that like Southerners can tell exactly where in the South you're from, but it's kind of like a Huntsville, kind of like North Alabama accent. So I think he's from North Alabama. I do, yep. And so that's my hypothesis, right? So I don't know how I would go back, and I guess I could look him up and test that out. But I think he's in Alabama. He's an engineer, right? And he had this video where a buddy of his, who's also an engineer, created a reverse bicycle.
Well, I think the gist of it was they had the regular spot where you've got your handlebars that you're going to steer left and right on your bike, and they added an extra gear on the front, so it's
interlocking gears.
So that when you turn left, the wheel would actually turn right, so it'd be backwards.
So you turn left, the wheel turns right. If you turn right, the wheel turns left.
And so then the video is about his thinking that this wouldn't be that hard to learn to ride a backwards bicycle.
And it was funny watching it because like he would try to get on it. And even trying to get started on the bicycle, you put your weight down. And I didn't think of it till I was watching him, because he even pointed this out in the video. People say you never forget how to ride a bike. Like, yes. You can't forget it, right? And I was thinking, but I don't think about riding a bike because I just know how to do it. I get on the bike and I go. And I'm watching this guy try to ride this bike, and even putting his weight down on the pedal to get rolling, I realized he had to lean on the handlebars a certain way. And then I was thinking about, the last time I rode a bike, you do lean on the handlebars a certain way. And if that were already reversed, already out of the gate, you're going to have trouble getting going. Go ahead.
Well, and basically that shows him, and he can't even get his balance to go 3 feet.
No.
And it's
much
him trying,
trying,
and then he has where he's given talks a few different places, and people that get up from an audience, and they try, and still can't go 5 feet, 10 feet, anything. And the reality that all these different little things that seem so ingrained for you about what it is to ride a bike, because one thing's backwards. The one thing that you're used to about steering makes it basically impossible for your brain to quickly, even though you know how to do it.
Well, how long? I'm trying to remember. How long did he say it took him to learn? He did eventually learn how to ride the thing.
Yes.
But I'm trying to remember how long he said it took him.
8 months.
Is that what he said? 8 months?
He said he'd go out regularly, and after 8 months, he said something kind of clicked in his brain.
All of a sudden he could do it.
Yeah.
But then, well, I mean, I guess maybe we'll get to that in a minute. But what I thought was funny was he kind of pointed. So he's an engineer, right? He's an engineer, and so he was talking about the mathematical algorithms. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm not like a beautiful mind over here. So when I get on a bicycle, I don't see the chalkboard with the mathematical algorithms like on the chalkboard while I'm writing, right? But he was talking about that what your brain is going through is actually calculating, like a computer would have to calculate utilizing mathematics. A computer trying to do the same task as a human riding a bike, it's a ridiculous amount of information.
He lists off a bunch of things that clearly are related to physics and other things,
right,
as it shows some people riding a bike on the video. And
so if you were going to program a robot to ride a bicycle, the sheer amount of data dump just for the one act of riding a bicycle, it is amazing what the human brain can do. And we don't even realize we're doing it because we don't think of it like an algorithm or set of algorithms. It was actually a set of algorithms, right? So we don't think of that as like a set of algorithms. We're just riding a bike. And he's explaining that, no. What you're doing has all these, laws of physics that you're taking into account. And you don't even realize you're doing it. So then you change the one thing, right, just the steering, and then you suddenly, the whole act of riding a bike, you can't do it.
Falls apart. And
he's gone to university campuses and stuff. And he's done this with students across the country and even in other countries across the world. And it's funny, you tell him to ride. I saw he had $200 in his hand and he said, come over here. It's like 10 feet away. It's like a basketball shot, right? It's like 10 feet away. And he's like, just come over here and you grab the $200. And nobody can get 10 feet on the bicycle. So nobody can do this. It took him 8 months to learn how to ride this bicycle backwards. And then he went to Amsterdam.
I think this might be the funniest part of the video of him struggling here in a second. But yes,
so
he goes to Amsterdam.
He goes to Amsterdam, and apparently it's a biking town. Like everybody and their brother has got a bike.
My wife's family, she's Dutch, is for those 100% Dutch.
She is.
So we've got family that she's had come over from Netherlands.
Okay.
And so they bike everywhere.
There's
tons of bikes.
Okay. All right. So. And he was showing it. I mean, like he's in the streets of Amsterdam. There's just the bikes lined up on the sides of the street. So he borrowed a bike from somebody who was willing to let him, like, who's this weird American, but I'll let you borrow my bike for this video you're doing. And he tries to ride a regular bike, and now all of a sudden he can't ride the regular bike.
Yeah, the question was, after 8 months of learning to ride a backwards steering bicycle, can I ride a bike again? Is it just like getting on a bike, riding a bike? You never forget how to ride a bike. And he had forgotten how to ride a bike.
Now, what's funny about this is that learning how to ride a bike the regular way, and he didn't really bring this out because it wasn't as funny for his argument, because he's trying to make people laugh a little bit with this video while he's trying to teach them something. But what I think is interesting, it took him 8 months to learn how to ride a bike, like a reverse bicycle. It only took him an afternoon to remember how to ride the bike the regular way. So he had forgotten, right? Yes. He had forgotten, kept trying to fall off. But he eventually, something again clicked in his brain. His brain went back to the old algorithm set for how to ride a bike the regular way. So it took him, I don't know, probably a few hours to remember how to do that. What was funny to me is that he did remember how to do it in only a few hours. It didn't take 8 more months. But the point that he was trying to make was, of course, that your brain actually gets sort of stuck in one way of thinking how to do something, or one way of thinking about anything, really. And that you might think, well, if I have option A of how to think about something, and I have option B of how to think about something, I can hold those two options together in my mind. And what the bicycle versus the reverse bicycle versus back to the bicycle showed is that you can't actually hold those two different ways of looking at something side by side in your brain. Your brain has to pick this set of algorithms, or it has to pick this set of algorithms.
In my mind, I thought about it a little bit like you've got two paths. Mm-hmm. And the one path that your brain knows is the rut you're going to go back into.
Right.
And because one of the points he made that I think is important for us to unpack this as we think about what this means for us and what we think about this means in terms of when we look at our faith, we look at how we're living in the world, whatever it happens to be, is that knowledge doesn't equal understanding. He talks about this.
Yeah, he does talk about that, yeah.
The idea that I know that there's this other path, or I know that there's other way to ride a bike, or I know this thing is here, but how quickly, even as do I understand how to do it? Can I make it happen? I'm going to slip right back into the rut of what I'm used to, and what my brain's programmed to think through, and how I typically respond to a situation, how I typically look at a situation, how I typically think about it.
I wonder if this is in any way related to what people mean when they say, you don't really... Have you ever heard this? I've had it said to me, you don't really understand something. So you talk about knowledge does not equal understanding. I've had it said to me, you don't really understand something unless you could explain it to someone else in very, very simple language. Complex, big ideas, but then you explain it in very, very simple language. Because knowing it, for a test, like knowledge, like knowing it, and I think about the students I teach.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach the one course over at Concordia University, and I teach mostly freshmen and sophomores, right? So, and I'm watching these successive generations. They think that having something available on Google is the same as deeply knowing something.
Mm-hmm.
So having all of this compendium of knowledge available at your fingertips, I mean, it's a miracle of modern technology, but having all of that available at your fingertips, that knowledge, that huge amount of knowledge available at your fingertips, is still not the same as actually understanding a subject.
Yep. No, I think it's that. I think it's even comparable in my mind to thinking about, I grew up here in Lincoln, and so, and I think about how I know where to get somewhere.
Right.
I have the knowledge about how to get somewhere, but you didn't grow up here. You weren't raised here.
So I might get there completely different.
Well, I was more thinking about the fact that I might know how to get there, but might not be able to tell you very well.
Or tell me how to get there. Yeah.
It's over by the thing next to the one thing that I know when I turn by the.
And then that
doesn't make any sense.
That store that burned down 10 years ago, right? So you start to get into those kind of directions. But yeah, so he made that point. Knowledge does not equal understanding, and when I think about the applications for this, right? So you're talking about getting stuck in a rut of one way of thinking, and I'm just trying to think of, okay, this is in churches, right? In churches, it's amazing to me how quickly something becomes a tradition. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. So, I'll give you two examples. So the first example is a Presbyterian church that I knew in St. Louis, and they had a chair for the pastor who preached, and then they had an empty chair down front, and it was down front in front of the stage area. It's an extra chair down front, and so there's a buddy of mine was over there visiting because we were doing we were working together on social work type stuff. So it wasn't like a joint service or anything like that. It was we were working together on joint social work stuff. So a buddy of mine who's LCMS was visiting over there at their church, and he saw this chair, and so he asked the preacher, he's like, so what's the extra chair for? And he's like, honestly, I don't even know. It's just always been here, and nobody moves it, so I just leave it there, and I've got other things on my mind, battles I'm fighting, I don't in leadership, with the congregation, and I don't really want to upset them over moving a chair, so I just leave the chair there. But then afterwards, this preacher got to thinking about it, this Presbyterian minister got to thinking about it, and he went and asked a really elderly member of the congregation, because he needed institutional memory. So he went and he asked one of the oldest members of the congregation, so what's the deal with the chair? And the guy told him, oh, well, that's from way back in the day when we didn't have enough pastors for every church, and it was for circuit riders, and they'd get here and they were tired. So there were regular presbyters, because it's the Presbyterian church, so there's regular elders, so they sit up front. So compared to how LCMS people treat our elders, right, they treat their elders like royalty, right, because that's how their church is set up. So those chairs were for the elders up top, right, and the chair down front on the bottom, that was actually reserved for the circuit rider. When he got there, he's tired, and he'd come in and he'd sit there for a minute, have a glass of water, and collect himself before he began speaking. So, I mean, that's all well and good, but it still had been sitting there long after.
And when was the last time a guy had come through the chair for that purpose?
They didn't. I mean, this isn't like a relay marathon. This is like the Pony Express for the Bible. They don't Uber Eats for the Bible. You know what I mean? Like they don't need that anymore.
Yep.
And yet that chair's still sitting there. And then you think, well, okay, that's an established church. That's what it makes me think. That's an established church. And then you think, well, hey, a church plant, like a brand new church start, they wouldn't act that way, right? They wouldn't act that way. But I had a buddy of mine started his congregation out of hours in Knoxville. Mm-hmm. He's a classmate of mine, Matt Peoples, super great guy. Now he's
planting a new church.
Yeah,
right?
he's planting a new church. Now he's a mission executive up in like the New Jersey district, and he works with helping other people how to plant churches. Had a successful church plant. It was awesome, and we were really proud to partner with him in this church plant. He planted it in a movie theater. I mean, you can't get any less traditional than that because he was just renting and it was relatively cheap, so the overhead was low when you think about the finances of a church startup. And he had this huge screen for all the eye candy, mm-hmm. Like all the lyrics for the songs, or if you wanted to do videos or any kind of visuals during the sermon time or whatever, like it was all up there, and he had this huge screen for all the eye candy. So it's a great setup, right?
I think you've even told me something about this where it was intentional of doing it that way because they were looking at a certain demographic of folks that are trying to get in the door that typically maybe weren't coming to a Sunday service.
24 to 30 something males, and like it was that specific.
And so it was well thought out. It was why they did it was the word.
Right. So really intentional, really well thought out. He wasn't 6 months into that church plant to where he wanted to make a change on a Sunday morning. Now remember, they've got popcorn. They really did. They had popcorn popping in the popcorn machine because the movie theater let them do it. So you come in and you're not church. You're from a de-church background, meaning you grew up in the church and then you left it for a number of years. You've never been to a church.
You're just getting your foot in the door. Only been there for at max 6 months.
Right, and it's a movie theater.
Yes.
It's not even like how's everybody doing? The Lord be with you. Right, like it's not even.
It's pretty low church.
It's very low church. It's in a movie theater.
Yeah.
I mean, so they got popcorn. You're in a movie theater. The lights are low. The eye candy's up there. They got the praise band. All this stuff. It wasn't 6 months that people who had never grown up in church. He wanted to change something in the order, in a movie theater, on a Sunday morning. He wanted to change something in the order, and somebody from the congregation went, Pastor, we don't do it that way. Like they had been doing it that way for 60 years. It was 6 months.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just shows me how ingrained we get in our thinking without realizing that that's what we've done, and we don't ever look at it. I think it's also, what were we going to say?
Well, it makes me think of two different things, and this is kind of my head getting into sort of application about how I think for you and I when we do this working in ministry together, or how we think about this as body of Christ here at Faith, and when we're living our life, discipleship and those kinds of things. But two different things. One, just in terms of whatever we're doing here at Faith, whether it's how we have a donut line or how we do communion or whatever the example is, that we're willing to at least acknowledge whatever the ruts or the ways that our ingrained thinking influences how we look at how we do a church.
Yeah.
But also from the standpoint of just thinking more generally when we're engaging with our community, engaging with somebody that maybe isn't used to whatever we do here, and we're talking about the Bible, we're talking about Jesus, we're talking about resurrection, we're talking about forgiveness, we're talking about sanctification, justification, all these very Lutheran kind of words. We have to remember that this is ingrained for us. This is stuff we know really well. Are we willing to think about it in a way to help reach somebody?
Who's ingrained with a completely different set, like a completely different information set, right? Or data set, I should say. So, okay, so we say that conversion, so you weren't following Jesus, now you are following Jesus. We say that that's a miracle of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
The reverse bicycle makes me think that we're starting to build a neurological case for exactly what we mean when we say it's a miracle, because he learned after 8 months how to ride the reverse bicycle, and then he had to go back to remembering how to ride a regular bicycle, and he had a lot of trouble with it. And that member of the congregation who sent us this video, I remember him texting later, this makes me think that no information would be better than the wrong information. So in other words, the wrong information about how to ride a bicycle with the reverse bike now made the truth of riding a correct bicycle almost impossible.
Well, let's just go off of that. The wrong information into being worse than no information, but then the miracle of conversion, and my
Right.
brain went right to Pentecost. And
Right.
you've got the crowd sitting there,
Right.
and Peter's up talking, and everybody's hearing in their own language.
Yeah.
The crowd thinks that the crowd must be drunk. That
Yeah,
the people must
that
be
the,
drunk.
That the people with the Spirit are drunk.
Yeah,
Because they've got a completely different data set. So they're looking at this event happening
this
in
clearly
front of
can't
them.
make any sense.
Right. Absolutely.
It must be that they're drunk.
Right.
When in reality it wasn't that they were drunk, and then you've got immediately 5,000 people were added to their number that day.
Right. But they had to be open to completely different information, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is that jarring. It's the difference between a reverse bicycle and a regular bicycle. You have to be open to completely different information than what you assumed
they're drunk
before.
or Jesus is my Lord.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
you don't get
those
any
don't
farther
work.
apart. Yeah, no, you don't. Well, I should say further apart by degree,
Yes.
right? So you don't get any further apart than those two positions. They're drunk or Jesus is Lord. So, as we continue in ministry together, I guess my hope for you and me as leaders first, right, as the pastors first, is that we would take pause every now and again to think about how we might be in a rut or how we might be ingrained in one certain way of thinking about whatever it is we're doing. And hopefully what that does is encourages other members of our congregation to also take a look at where are we in a rut, where are we ingrained in something that really there might be another way of thinking about this,
Yeah.
right? And so whatever aspect of ministry it is that we're looking at, there's always another way to look at it.
Well,
and
I think that too, and I think
what we're
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
and what we're in pursuit of course, is the truth.
yes,
We're looking for a real bicycle, not a reverse bicycle,
Yeah.
right? Like we're looking, like somewhere out there is the truth, but sometimes the things that we get really upset about aren't a matter of truth. It's just we got kind of in a rut about one data set.
Well, and I was just thinking about this, and you preached about this recently of the reminder about how much, whether we're trying to fit our minds into Scripture, or whether
Yeah.
Scripture then
changes our minds.
Scriptures, and
Yeah.
and in those moments, if we're trying to be reflective about our own ingrained sense of thinking,
Yeah.
do we intentionally seek out God's Word to let it read us a little bit,
Yeah.
to give it that space for God's revealed Word to say,
Yeah.
maybe this is a little bit different way that you can think it, or maybe the way you are looking at it is okay.
You open up your scriptures and there's a picture and like there's a prophet pointing at the bicycle going, this is what a correct bicycle looks like.
Yeah.
The one you're riding is wonky and this is what a correct bicycle looks like. Well, that's interesting stuff to think about as we move forward. I think we've given everybody a little bit to chew on here today, maybe on a ride home from work or from a kid's practice or something like that. So I think maybe now at this point we and Harvey here
Yeah.
can say goodbye for now. And,
I'll finish with this at least, because this is one more final thought. But
yeah,
in the same text message with the member going back and forth, and
Right.
part of the joke was whether the half pastor, being me, should try to get on the backwards bicycle and try to ride it.
I would pay to see that actually.
And this is maybe a topic for another day because we're wrapping up. But part of me wants to really try it because there's part of my brain that thinks, well, I could do that.
I actually think the guy that sent us the stuff, I think he could actually do that. He's pretty handy.
Yeah, I know.
Like, so I'm wondering, like, if he's watching, you know who you are. Maybe we should invent our own reverse bicycle, and I would actually pay money to see
me
Pastor
struggle.
Dan struggle and just beef it on the reverse bicycle. Yeah, I don't want you to struggle. I actually want to see like a best home videos fall. I want to see it
Yeah.
happen. I mean, I love you, brother, but
You'll be okay, but it'll be a little rough. For a
yeah.
moment.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next time on 1.5 Pastors.
Thanks.